Hello, hello, everybody. I am live. I'm going live with my friend Daria. Daria, I think to invite you, you have to join the live first. Let me see if I can send her a message. Hey.
Hello.
How's it going?
Hey, good. Can you hear me okay? All good?
Yes.
Okay, good. My first live. Oh my God, exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah, and I can already see people joined as well, which is awesome.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, I guess we should do a bit of a intro about us, right? For people who don't know who we are.
Yeah, let's start there.
Yes. So I'm Daria. I'm a trauma-informed manifestation coach and intuitive spiritual guide. And you?
I'm Jamie. I'm a former registered nurse turned life coach, and I'm also kind of a spiritual guide and a psychic, and I do a lot of other things.
Yeah. And I mean, we actually met in a spiritual group, like through a very random connection. So that was really awesome. And like, as soon as we jumped on a call and started talking, like, I don't know about you, but I felt like an instant connection. And I felt like the conversations we were having, there was just these sort of little nuggets of wisdom that I was like, okay, you know what? Like, it would be so good to just have these conversations and share this wisdom that's coming out in our interactions.
Yeah, same here. Daria and I clicked like immediately, and a lot of our conversations are very deep and they're very soulful. And I think it's important to let other people in on the concepts that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess let's actually start there. Like the whole topic that we wanted to first bring in is breaking free from the ego and that heart-centered living. And to me, that's kind of how our journey began because lately what I've been finding I'm doing a lot more is, there's so many posts online, there's so many groups, but sometimes there's just something that I connect to in terms of energy. Like I see certain people and it's not about who they are, what they're doing. There's just something about them and their energy that draws me in. And those are the connections that I've made lately that have been so much more in depth than like I could have even imagined. So I guess the point I'm making here as well that to start off, like to coming to the heart is sometimes looking beyond labels, looking beyond names is just to tune in from a place that's beyond.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make choices and connect with people, places, and things that feel right to you. We can put a lot of effort in kind of spinning our wheels and trying to artificially force connections or create things from a place of efforting or from a place of lack and feeling like we don't have enough. Or we can kind of tune into the heart space and see where we're led. And those connections and situations that come from that space tend to be much more fulfilling than things that are forced.
Yeah. And I would add as well, I guess that, well, for me anyway, in the past, I found myself in a lot of scenarios like work placements where I couldn't fully be myself, and I put on these masks on the way I portrayed myself in a certain way because that's kind of what I felt I had to do to fit in those scenarios. So in that sense, I feel like some of the connections I made maybe weren't so authentic because I don't think I really showed my true self because I guess I was too scared to be judged at those times. I was too scared to not fit in into those environments. And these days, there are a lot of environments that force us to do that, unfortunately. Like we find ourselves in, like, especially work. I feel like a lot of work, I know with your past as well, with working in mental health, same as me, I felt like I had to wear a certain mask to fit in with the people that were working there. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you want to share a little bit.
Yeah, Yeah, me too. I've struggled moving down here. I live in the deep South, Mississippi, and I've struggled with feeling safe to authentically be myself because my natural frequency, it's just seems to be so different from people around me. And I almost kind of created a false personality, a false life that was kind of dimming my light because I wasn't fully expressing myself. I wasn't fully admitting who I am. And it just led to a lot of connections, a lot of jobs, a lot of things that were not fulfilling and they didn't really add to my life.
Yeah. I think same. I felt very stuck in what I was doing, and I felt stuck in the masks I was wearing because I thought that those are the masks that I needed to have to be recognized and to be loved, to be accepted. And I think the real challenge was to start to see that it can be safe living without those masks. But as much as that's such a challenge, it's such a gift because to show up authentically as yourself, it's almost like a like I can almost breathe out. It's a breath of fresh air of like, I don't need to be anyone else to be accepted and loved. And it's kind of like, even if people that were in my life no longer want to accept or love me, I've come to a place where I accept that for myself because I'm in a place where I can give myself the self-care and the self-love, the self-nurture that I thought I needed from other people.
Yeah, and that's a really important point because when you begin living your life authentically and you connect into your heart and your inner child and you allow yourself to be who you are, a lot of people are going to fall away from your life. And in the beginning, this kind of inhibits us. Like we're afraid to be ourselves because we are afraid of losing people. We're afraid that nobody is going to accept us if we are who we really are and we'll be left all alone. But when have courage and you're brave and you're willing to be your authentic self, even though you will lose a lot of people, the universe will start bringing in the cooperative components of your manifestation, your new life as your authentic self, and you'll attract people who are a vibrational match to who you really are at your core.
Yeah. And like talking about manifestation, I think this is one of the big things that I found was actually like really holding me back in terms of manifesting the life that I wanted for myself was this underlined fear of the people who are already in my life not being able to accept me for me. And that was such a fear of like rejection, of abandonment. And I really had to work through that and to give myself the space to feel all that was coming up and to sort of self-nurture and say that it's okay. Like for one, who knows? Like let's give people the chance to get to know the new you, the real you, and it's up to them how they want to deal with that. But it's like I'm not going to be the one to make that decision for them. Like I'm leaving that open, and it's that self-acceptance that then led me to break away from that barrier and then to show up authentically. And today is one of them things. Actually, it's like one of my big steps of showing up authentically, of speaking out, of having my voice and being seen. And that's been such a challenge for me in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's important, when you begin to remove those masks and live authentically, to have a really solid foundation of self-love, because you are going to have to give yourself all of that love that you are getting from the external world. So you have to learn how to anchor into your self-worth and learn how to, like you do with the somatic body work, calm the nervous system so that it's not freaking out if it has to let go of certain things.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, yeah, calming the nervous system. For example, today, like I had to do a lot of grounding. I had to, even though I had like other things on my to-do list, which is never ending, of course, but like, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm actually going to show up for myself. I'm going to show that self-love, self-care for myself. I'm going to spend the day addressing whatever's coming through in the body. I'm going to be present and I'm going to witness what's coming up, whether that's somatic movements and just feeling into all the stresses that are coming up, as well as the inner children and those parts of me that were coming up because I was scared to be seen. And it's just sitting with them and giving that self-nurture through food, through teas, through however else you connect to those parts and whatever else feels safe. So like really creating this nourishing space to then have the capacity to show up and be here.
I'm an abuse survivor. I've been through a lot of trauma, and calming my nervous system has become my main way that I take care of myself. I use a lot of different modalities to calm my nervous system. I like to take hot baths. I like to be out in nature, spend time with my children. I have a dog now. I love petting my dog. And these things sound so simple and mundane, but when you're really using them with that intention to pour into your own cup and then give from your overflow, it becomes like a solid foundation for pouring more and more love into your life.
Yeah. And actually, just for that, I had this thought like today as well. Like, I was walking through the park that's nearby where I live, and I had this realization that I've taken that walk so many times before. And even before I tried to be present and in the moment to really connect with nature, I think I was still finding myself stuck in those loops of the mind coming through and coming up. And today I actually had a very profound experience where I started to really embody and like feel into myself as I was walking. So I would start to feel in, okay, how do my arms feel right now? How do my legs feel right now? And actually I had a lot of tension come through that I hadn't even noticed was there.
Yeah.
And it was this like profound experience of this embodiment of being present. And even as a practitioner within this work, like where I do this with clients, I still catch myself being stuck within those ego states, even in moments where, you know, I show others how to do. So it's kind of like we're all living in this. There is no sort of reaching a certain point and then suddenly it's gone. Like the ego is part of the human experience. So for me, it's very much actually learning to have that awareness and sort of catching yourself when it's happening, showing love and compassion to that side of us. And that's what heart-centeredness is, because it's not like, okay, well, I'm going to suddenly get to a place and the ego is just not going to be there anymore. Like, it's always going to be there, but it's about having a relationship with it that's self-caring and nurturing.
Yeah. And it's about knowing, like, hey, my ego is triggered right now, and becoming becoming aware of that, right? Instead of just letting it take control of the reality and begin making things worse and worse and worse. No, oh, my ego is triggered right now, and reaching for those coping skills, right? And those self-care modalities to calm the nervous system so that you get back in control of your own body, of your breathing, of your heart rate, and then you're able to make decisions from a centered place, from the place of your soul, rather than allowing the ego to get out of control. And you're right, it never goes away completely. I had someone ask me recently, how long was my spiritual awakening? And I said, it never ends. You're always finding something that needs to be healed. I think we're put on this earth to be on a healing journey, and it's never about, you know, I'm done learning and now I'm better than everybody else because I don't use my ego. That doesn't happen. The ego doesn't go away. It just becomes something that we learn how to take care of and care for so that it can be in a healthy state and we can have a healthy relationship with our ego.
Yeah. And I think I'd like to add to that as well. Like, the ego actually just wants to protect us. Like, ultimately, all parts of us are just here to keep us safe. Like, all of us are in this existence, all parts, the nervous system, everything is trying to keep us safe. It's just sometimes maybe it's still got old programming, old patterns that, you know, are a little bit outdated. So maybe they need some revisiting and a little bit of love. But it's when we see the ego coming up and, you know, maybe we catch ourselves judging and suddenly we're like, okay, why am I judging? It's giving it room to be. So it's not suddenly saying, oh, okay, I don't want to judge, I'm not dealing with it. It's actually the opposite, saying, okay, I see you, you're judging, cool, I accept you, let's figure this out together, and kind of like actually inviting it in. So it's about inviting the ego in, the shadow, as people like to call it, rather than trying to get rid of it, because that's how you tend to a relationship with it. You don't want to push it way further, because then it'll build up more defense mechanisms and it'll cause you more symptoms.
Yes. I think that was a really important thing you said. The ego does want to protect us. That is the purpose of the ego, to give you a personality structure so you can function, so you have a name, so you can get mail delivered to your house, right? but it's not meant to run the show. And we can connect to the higher self and the soul and make decisions and create from that level, while kind of taming the ego. And like you said, not shutting out the ego and saying, ego, you don't matter, but kind of redirecting and guiding the ego so that it can be useful for us and play the role it's supposed to fulfill, rather than just making unconscious decisions because we're in ego.
Yeah, for sure. That, I think that's the key thing here, isn't it? A lot of the time we are in autopilot, so we are making those unconscious decisions, and that's where we are an ego, like we are driven by it. And I guess to come out of that, what we do is we start to really hold awareness for ourselves and hold presence. So we start to really tune in as much as possible day to day into every moment of what you're doing. So you wake up, you can have a minute to say, okay, where am I? Like, where is my body? Where's my mind? Where's my soul? And connecting to the present moment and seeing who's running the show right now. And same throughout the day. It's like, whatever you're doing, just catch yourself out for a minute and stay back and say, okay, what's going on right now? Like, what are the thoughts that are coming up? Because by just seeing the thoughts that are coming up, you can already identify whether they're coming from the ego or from the heart. Because a lot of the time, ego-driven thoughts are a lot of the time driven in fear and shame and guilt and something that could potentially be holding you back. Whereas if you're coming from the heart, you're coming from that space of openness and connection and love. So yeah, I guess my point is, the more awareness we have throughout the day for ourselves, the more we can start to catch out what's going on. And as soon as that flip happens and we are aware, that's where we can make the decision of how we then function, and we're no longer an autopilot. So even if we still make the same decision and the outcome is the same, if we made it consciously, we're now back in control. We now have claimed our power, and that's the key
Yeah. Yes, I think the awareness is very important. You have to become like an observer of yourself. Where is this action coming from? Where is this desire coming from? Am I wanting this thing because I think I'm not good enough if I don't have it? Or am I angry at this person because they didn't meet a need that I needed, but I didn't express that need to that person? So it's about becoming a little bit of a scientist in your own life and looking at what's going on, the situations you're creating, and how they're being created, and whether, did you mean to create that? Were you thoughtful about what you were creating? Were you aware when you were creating it? Or were you in fear and then your ego took over and you created unconsciously?
Yeah. And I guess the question that's coming through here is, what if, some people, for example, feel that there's just too much, like, they're catching out and there's something that's coming through that is just too much to handle, too much to deal, or, there's a part of them that they're just not quite ready to accept yet. If there's just any advice or guidance in terms of, I guess, what to do in those moments.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit of shadow work, I think. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we deny and we repress. So sometimes that's part of our ego, right? We don't want to look at decisions that we made from a place of ego because we don't want to recognize that part of ourselves. Maybe because we're ashamed of it, maybe because we think it's bad. But like you said, you have to invite that part of yourself in and give it love. The reason that the ego and the shadow acts out is because it doesn't feel safe. So in order to calm and tame that part of yourself and become more conscious, you have to invite that unconscious part of yourself in and give it love.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? It's giving it love and maybe even saying to it, it's okay, I see you, and if you're not ready to like come up and fully speak out, yeah, that's okay. And then you kind of lovingly let it do what it needs to do. So it's kind of like still having that awareness, but not pushing anything beyond your own capacity either, because you don't want to go into overwhelm and, there could be things that are coming up. Then, yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like everything comes up when it's ready to come up, like in its own time. And it's like when you were saying about the awakening journey, like, yeah, it is a lifetime. Like, even for me, I feel like it's been a recent, in terms of like awakening journey, it's been a very recent spiritual aspect that's come into my life, maybe about 8 months ago. But the more I delve into it, the more and more stuff comes up. But that's because I'm in a place where I'm ready to handle it. I know how to deal with it. I have the tools, the skill sets, but it's taken me a long time to get to this place. And I've had to go through a lot on myself to get to a place where I can now handle it. So yeah.
Yeah, and the universe, it wants us to wake up and become conscious. So it will send us things, it will send us events, people, situations that may trigger us. And when we become triggered, that's an invitation from the shadow or from the ego to look at what wound is underneath that, what childhood pain that I didn't deal with, or what repressed emotions do I have underneath that are coming to the surface. So the universe will kind of try to grab you and shake you through different situations in your life so that you can become more aware of the unconscious parts of yourself.
Yeah. What I will share with me, until I really stabilized my nervous system, I wasn't really handling my triggers very well. So they were still kind of coming through and testing me, but it was coming through in like a lot of overwhelm. So what I would also say in terms of like being on this journey, like as a recommendation for everyone, is to really look into where are you at with your nervous system? Like how are you supporting your being on all levels? Because I found this to be so important and so crucial. It's a huge change. Like I used to get really bad panic attacks, anxiety, like depression. I've kind of like had all these severe, overwhelming things happen with me, and it's due to my nervous system being out of whack. It's due to me still having to show up for work and work a full-time job, and then dealing with a lot of repressed emotions and trauma, and also my nervous system being so unregulated, like just being in fight or flight, and me not doing very much to support myself. So I was, not eating very well. My sleep pattern was all over the place. And again, I completely make sense. Like all these parts of me, that's just how they were coping in that time. And I totally accept that. And I give it space and recognition that that's the best I did at that time. And that's totally okay. But when that flip and that change happened was when I realized how much it matters to self-care and self-nurture. And as soon as I changed how I eat, how I sleep, how I address myself, and how much I work, like how much pressure I put on myself, and when I came into regulation, that's where things started to really shift. Because then when anything started to come up, I had the space to process it, because my system was no longer in overwhelm, or I had the tools to be able to deal with it now.
Yeah. And if you think of like your emotions and your triggers and your nervous system dysregulation, your traumas as your feminine energy to some degree, the self-care routine and the self-love becomes the masculine. So you're acting as your own masculine. You're providing for yourself. You're caring for yourself. You're providing structure and consistency and self-love, unconditional love, and letting the feminine aspect know everything is okay. I'm here for you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm not going anywhere. And that helps us balance the two energies of feminine and masculine within ourselves.
Yeah. Wow, I really love that. I've never actually like thought of it that way. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess talking about like heart-centered in general, I usually think of, like more feminine because of like intuitive, but actually there is also that element of masculine within as well, because to be heart-centered isn't just to follow flow, it isn't just to be intuitive, but to also act on that intuition, and to also show up in the way you feel you should show up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and also part of that masculine aspect is like having discipline, having boundaries, and protecting yourself. So rather than protecting yourself from a point of ego, where you're kind of out of control and you're acting on all your childhood traumas and everything, but protecting yourself as your own divine masculine energy, and like you said, providing also structure and discipline and consistency. And just like when you're raising a child, when you give them firm boundaries and rules, it makes them feel safe and secure because they know what to expect. That's part of reparenting yourself, is becoming your own authority over yourself and learning to trust yourself to make your own decisions.
Yeah. Wow, that really hit deep in terms of like, wow, like, the aspect of reparenting and yeah, being there for yourself and the boundaries. Like, I think for me, boundaries has been such a struggle like my whole life, and it's one of the things I've really struggled to put in place with other people as well as myself. So like learning to say no has been the biggest challenge. And yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but learning to say no from a place of because this is what I need right now, not out of place of because it's going to make someone else feel worse. That has been a really hard concept for me to process because I've always said yes, because I've always put other people first, and there's almost this place of, well, if I show up for them, I'm a good person, I'm a kind person. But actually what I've had to learn was that I need to show up for myself first and foremost, because then I can show up for someone else with full energy, with full capacity. So learning that a no is actually kind has been the biggest change for me.
Yeah, and yeah, setting boundaries is never about punishing the other person or trying to make them feel bad because they, misstepped your boundaries or something like that. It's not about punishing the other person. It's about creating a safe container for yourself. And to do that, you have to have boundaries. You have to keep certain energies away in order to be able to fully open your heart and be vulnerable. So that's kind of like the energy of the divine masculine, setting boundaries so that the feminine can flourish and thrive and feel safe to be open and in flow and expressing from the heart.
Yeah. I guess for me, again, the biggest thing of how I got there and how I was doing that was learning to communicate more. And this is where, again, that aspect comes in terms of ego versus heart. I feel like a lot of my communication in the past was always led by ego, was always led by, oh, but I have to say something in a way where it means I'm not offending someone, or so they don't judge me, or so that they don't think something else, and it's like that ego part just goes into overdrive and just goes like, okay, what do they need to hear from me? And that's the aspect that I had to really reparent, and to be like, actually, to communicate from the heart, I just have to speak my truth. And then however that lands is on that person. Because by me giving them almost like the power to be able to accept it however they do, is me showing that actually I trust for you to make your own judgments, your own decisions, and I'm no longer taking that power away. So before, when I was actually, communicating in a way where I was trying to fit in with someone, was actually taking someone's power away, because I'm taking away their own true essence to respond to me how they would naturally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I had two thoughts. So when you people please, in a way, it's almost deceiving the other person because you are actually creating a false identity. So let's say my aunt wants to come over for lunch and she texts me last minute, and I really don't want her to come, but I'm afraid to say no. So if I say yes anyway, you're actually disempowering that other person because they may want to make different choices with their life when you be your authentic self. So setting boundaries and authenticity, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a really great example. And yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go on. What was your thought?
Um, oh, this is what it was. You can't control how anybody else responds to you setting a boundary.
Yeah.
If you set a boundary and people freak out, that's not your fault, and that's not your problem to solve either. And you can't control that.
Yeah. Same as, I guess, you can't control anyone else's perception of what you're saying, which was another big thing I think I've had to learn. Like, in terms of how I used to communicate, which was very much people pleasing, okay, but like the way they took that on was still their own way of taking it on, and it was still based on their own reality. So it's kind of like, no matter how I communicated, someone else was going to perceive it in their own way regardless. So it's like, you might as well just speak your truth and see how they perceive that, because either way, they're already going to have their own perceptions and ideas, kind of no matter how and what you portray.
Yeah, and when you set a boundary and someone gets triggered, you're really orienting that person to what they need to look at and what they need to heal. So even if other people are upset that you're setting a boundary, if you're doing what's best for you, it's going to also be what's best for the other person, because we're multidimensional and we're all one on a higher level. So I always remind myself when I do what's best for me, it's also what's best for everybody else.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think let's repeat that. When you do what's best for me, it's what's best for everyone else. Definitely.
Yes,
Yeah.
when I do what's best for me, I'm doing what's best for everybody else.
Yeah. Could be a little takeaway, I guess, for anyone who tuned in and watching this to have this like a little mantra to say that it's okay. Like my own truth is what's best for everyone, for the world, and firstly and foremostly for me.
Yeah. And other people can get mad, but that may be what that person needs in that moment in order to work through certain things in their own life.
Yeah. This actually reminds me of like I was watching this YouTube about being seen and showing up and like working through a lot of my own issues of okay, why was I so scared to just speak out authentically and be seen? And a lot of it was because of judgment and criticism. And again, like this lady was saying, well, actually, even if someone takes away whatever and they respond to you in a negative and critical way, that's okay because maybe that will still set some sort of course of action for them and something will click into place. So sometimes we need to almost be triggered for something to happen, kind of how we mentioned earlier. It's a learning experience. So for me now, I try to show up even if I'm thinking, okay, other people there might be an aspect of them that's triggered by this or they're judging. That's okay. Who am I to say that that shouldn't happen? However they take that is how they take that, and maybe there's a lesson there or they take something away, whatever they need, or maybe not at all, and that's also okay. We're all our own people.
Yeah, and that's a lot about releasing judgment and being and looking at situations from a place of neutrality. Not, oh, I triggered that person, so that's bad. Maybe you triggered that person and that's good, right? Or it's just neutral. So yeah, I was a lot like you. I used to fear triggering other people, and I was inadvertently triggering people everywhere I went. But that is part of the role sometimes, especially when you're empathic or you're here on an ascension path or trying to connect to your higher self and develop spiritually. Sometimes that's part of the job is upsetting other people and kind of turning over the apple cart a little bit because it breaks up the set patterns that people are stuck in.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that came to mind, it's kind of like if someone's gonna judge you, they probably were gonna do it anyway. It's like
Yeah.
they've probably already made up their mind of what they think of you just based on your energy, and a lot of that is based on their own ego and whatever else is going through. So it's kind of like, what's the point of worrying about it, right? Like you're gonna show up how you show up, no matter what you do. They're still gonna respond the same way. So there's no point worrying about it.
Yeah, if you set a boundary and that person ends up having to leave your life, they were probably not meant to be in your life anyway. Because if they can't meet you at a level of love and respect and openness and communication, then it wasn't going to be a match anyway. So sometimes, they need that little bit of encouragement to go and work on certain things. And then maybe the next time they meet someone like you, they will understand that you have to approach that person in a certain way and with a certain level of respect to stay in that person's life. And it's tough love, but sometimes people need tough love.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I'm still learning, learning around as a people pleaser and like as someone who was so much like just showing up in mask here and there and different masks to different environments. Like, yeah, that's definitely still an aspect that I'm learning. Actually, I had a conversation with a friend not long ago, and it was really interesting. Like, we kind of realized that I did have a part of me up until maybe the age of 13 where I was actually a lot more just like straight spoken and like would just say what I thought. And then something happened, and then it just like shut down and closed off, and I became this huge people pleaser. And I was like trying to reflect back on how that happened because I certainly have these aspects in me to be more direct and more straight, but it just got shut down. And I think it was a lot of just what I was going through in life and a lot of trauma that then came about. So yeah, it's really interesting to reflect back on actually when you start to peel back those layers and you start to uncover the more real aspects of you, you kind of reflect on how you were younger, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a common story where when we were younger, we were just going along, being our authentic selves, and then something happened when we were being our authentic selves, and we shut down that part of ourselves and say it's not safe to be who I am, and we try to, almost create a false reality from other people's expectations because we don't feel safe to be our authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, for me, definitely reflecting back, like it was just such a sudden like shift where it all just like changed, and it's kind of like I lost my voice, I lost my ability to be seen, I lost that safety,
Mm-hmm.
so therefore everything went away. So yeah, trying to just peel that back and uncover those, connecting to those more child aspects, those aspects that used to be able to really tune into joy and carefree and love, and like that's been really healing as well. So yeah, I would really suggest to anyone really to like tune into their inner child a little bit more, in terms of that place of inner child that wants that fun, that safety, that free flow, because that's also a really great way to connect to your heart, to connect to that energy of lightedness and yeah, like child wonder.
Yeah, it's very important to have a relationship with your inner child and create a life that allows your inner child to have a bigger role in it, right? Whether that's through art, music, playing sports, or cooking, whatever your inner child likes to do, where it can just be in the moment and not worry about meeting expectations or being judged or graded on how well it's doing, and just let the inner child play, right? We have to stay connected to the part of us that wants to play.
Yeah, I think you said a really important thing here is like with no expectations. Like that's a really, really key part here, because what I found in myself as well, like in the past I used to do art, but I did that in school. So that was an element that was always graded. You had to like perform a certain way. And then I kind of lost touch with that because I felt that pressure of having to do it in a certain way. It's only very recently I've actually started to delve back into it, but really delve into it from a place of like whatever comes out, it doesn't matter. This is just about me expressing myself and just tuning into that energy, and it doesn't matter. And that's like a really, really, I feel like a hard aspect to find sometimes, especially in a world where it's so busy and we're all adulting and we all have these things that we have to get done and all these huge to-do lists. It's really hard to sometimes just find the time to do something just for the pleasure of doing it with zero expectation. So even like your care routine, like let's not do it because we want to look a certain way, we want to appear a certain way, we want to fix this or that. Let's just do it because it makes us feel good, like because we just want to feel nice and nourished. Or anything else that you do, like if you're doing cooking, let's cook not because you have to make this huge cake for someone's birthday. Still
Mm-hmm.
can still do that, but let's also make another cake where you can just delve into the process of making that cake, of just playing around with maybe the food, the ingredients, and just really tuning into how the child would have tuned into that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times we forget about the hobbies we had when we were younger, or we feel like we were being judged while we did those hobbies. Like, for example, when I was younger, I had the opportunity to do sports, like in school and things like that. But I would always feel a sense of pressure on myself, maybe coming from my parents or coming from the school or other people, that if I played a sport, I had to be really good at it. And there was no point in me bothering to play that sport just for fun. I had to be successful. I had to be number one. And I think it's about letting go of these artificial roles that are created in society where we have to fit into certain boxes, and just allowing ourselves to do things for the joy of doing it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the story for a lot of people. Like even as children, a lot of activities that we do, like for myself included, like I remember doing art club, dance club, sewing club, God knows how many other clubs, but and it was always, there was some sort of outcome to it. Like there was always this push to be the best at it, or push to like perform, or maybe this is something you end up being really good at later. So there was always like an agenda behind doing whatever this joyous activity was meant to be. So it really took it away. So even for me anyway, from that point of even as a child, I felt like all these activities that were meant to just be experienced as joyous, I always felt a pressure in them, at doing them. I always felt like I had to perform, I had to be the best, and that totally stuck. So actually learning to just do things for the fun of them has been so wonderful and so relieving. And yeah, I really recommend for anyone to just go and take half an hour for yourself and just ask your inner child self and be like, how do you want to play today? Let's do something. Let's just do something for the fun of doing it and just go and do that with no expectation, no pressure. You don't need to share this with anyone. This is just purely you connecting with that child self and just letting yourself have that magical wonder that children can do.
Yeah, and I think it's about letting go of that sense of I need to compete with somebody else, right? Because only the ego needs to be a winner. So if there's a winner and a loser, you're in a world of duality and black and white thinking, right? And what we want is to shift into 5D from 3D. And we want to let go of those rigid concepts of one person being better than another person or trying to force particular outcomes. And you win when you be yourself. You win when you let your light shine and your soul shine. It's not about what you created and comparing it to what other people are creating. The win is when you're connected to your heart and you're able to do activities that connect you to your heart and that make you happy.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. It's just absolutely another thing that, in the society, especially, we're just brought up on this mindset of, I need to be better. I have to perform better. Like, even with, like, I know we're both business owners. Like, even with that, it's like, oh, my marketing has to be better. I have to have more clients. It's like, oh, but if I don't have this client, then, it's just this constant competition, constant comparison. And that doesn't get you anywhere really in terms of soul fulfillment. Like, what gets you places soul fulfillment is connection, exactly how we connected. Like, being able to actually support each other's journey and being able to share that is such a gift. And like, the amount of energy boosts you get back from that connection is so much more than you ever being like potentially seeing yourself as better than someone else, because seeing yourself as better than someone else is not very fulfilling anyway.
Right?
Because you always feel alone.
How
You
empty is
feel like,
that, right?
yeah, it's lonely. Like, you feel like you're just this one person trying to outcompete everyone, and you're this one person on this little journey. And where's the fun in that? Like, yeah, it's lonely, it's stressful, it's difficult, and yeah, it's not very joyous. It's a lot more joyous when you can connect with people and build something together and work towards things together and share in that energy of fun and success and abundance.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. Like, I'm running this business because it's fun. It allows me to be creative. It allows me to express my inner child. It allows me to do things I always dreamed about doing, but didn't have the courage to do. And when you approach business from that aspect of this is about a place where I can play, this is about creating a space where I can be myself, that really it infuses your business with the energy of fun and the energy of love and the energy of freedom, and you want to infuse your business with positivity, and that's what attracts people towards you, not like trying to crunch numbers or get leads or make sure you book a certain number of clients. That's the old way, like where we had to go and be in the rat race and do more and more and more. And all of that falls away when you kind of shift into 5D, you let go of your ego. It becomes about the self-care and the fun and the joy.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, that's for sure what I found as well. It's like, show up as you want to become. So it's like, as you want to see yourself in the future of where you're working towards, right? Of the life you want to build, already show up as that now, because actually you're already that version. Like, you already have everything in your life that you think you need. Because for a lot of us, whenever we're striving towards something, whether that's a business, a house, or whatever else, it's usually a feeling of fulfillment, a feeling of sort of joy, love, connectedness. But actually, all those things we already have around us. So it's actually about just tuning into what we do already have and giving gratitude to that, because then we attract more of it to come in. And then our vision just becomes bigger and bigger. But it's about realizing that it's important to actually start off with the energy of where you want to head. Otherwise, if you start off with that energy of like, I need to put in so much more, I have to be constantly busy, I can't put myself first, then that's the trajectory you take, and that's where you're going to end up, because that's the course you've put down for yourself. So we need to shift that. We need to shift away from that thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever energies you're anchoring into your reality by feeding them are the energies that are going to multiply, right? They're going to, I can't think of the word right now, but they're going to perpetuate. They're going to continue. So if you see yourself being a business owner and getting to sleep in, only taking one or two clients a day, not rushing, and having a lot of free time and abundance, then that's the lifestyle you need to start living right now. Because otherwise, like you said, if you keep using and creating the energy of, I need to get somewhere, I need to get something done, then you will always be doing that because that's the energy you're feeding into your creation.
Yeah. And also you're gonna miss the whole journey, which is the whole thing, right? The whole point is the journey. Like it's a gift to already be on this journey, whether you're right at the start or you're reaching somewhere else and then it shifts into something. Like the whole point is enjoying what you're doing. So I mean, even with me, I've absolutely found myself being like, oh, I just need to get to this place and then I need to get here. And it's this constant push of like the next thing. But what about the now? Actually,
Right.
the now is also so beautiful. Like there's so much amazing things happening right now. Let's just take a moment to pause and take that in, take in the amazing things that are going on and infuse that energy. And then it's just so much easier to attract more of it.
Yeah, and it's about, I agree, it's about the joy of the present moment. When you're always trying to go somewhere, get somewhere, or reach some sort of a goal, you're leaving the present moment. So when you slow down and you take your time and you infuse your reality with self-love and self-care, you actually create faster and easier and with more ease than you do when you try to create in the old way.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully this shift is starting to happen for many people. Hopefully, there is this shift towards heart-centered living and trying to be more present, more aware, because that's the key, isn't it? It's just being aware. Like you said, I like how you said it was being a scientist about yourself, right? Just having that curiosity, almost like a child as well, having that sense of wonder and adventure and curiosity. So tuning into those energies within yourself and building the reality you want from that.
Yep, you gotta release that self-judgment and let yourself play and experiment and yeah, be a scientist with the reality for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, this seems like a really great place to end. I think that today's discussion, we had so many topics that came through actually in terms of heart-centered living. I feel like there was a lot of side topics which were really interesting. So yeah, thank you for having this conversation. It's always so heart-opening as well.
Okay, I'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.